Hello, this is Christian Idealism. Today I'm just going to be telling my story of how my faith evolved. And there's going to be a lot of people that I'm going to be mentioning, and there's going to be a lot of events that I'm going to be talking about. But basically, I'm going to give the story of how I reached this point and how I started this channel and what exactly happened with regards to how my faith grew over time. And so if you're new to the channel, you can watch my other videos if you want to, if you don't really care. But for those interested, because I will get questions of how exactly did you reach this point, this is what this video is for. And so I'm going to be going way back to the beginning. Now, I'm not going way back to when I was born, but I'm going to be going back to the chain of events that led up to kind of where I am now. And so to start off, let's kind of start off, where did I actually start on YouTube? So I started on YouTube because I liked playing video games, right? And as every little middle schooler likes to do, they like to play video games. Not all of them, but I did. And I was watching a lot of gamers on YouTube at the time. I just watched a lot of video game content and so forth, and specifically I watched this YouTuber named McJuggernuggets, and I watched him because he had a lot of funny videos about his father, his psycho dad destroying his Xboxes constantly, and I really liked his stuff, and I started watching other YouTubers, and so that's what got me to it. So basically what it was like was I started really liking gaming, and I started watching a lot of YouTubers gaming, and so I started getting into that whole sort of thing. Now, what happened was with gaming, I started getting kind of not bored with it, but I wanted to do things in it that normal gamers don't do. And one of those things would be hacking. I started getting obsessed with modding video games, and I actually did it a few times. But I started researching hacking groups like Anonymous, and the reason why Anonymous is relevant to this discussion or to my story is because they're the ones that got me into the whole conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Now, I'll get a little more into that in a moment, but basically what happened was I really liked video games. I wanted to figure out how to change video games, so I started doing research on hacking groups, and therefore I jump into the rabbit hole of the government doing things that are illegal and that, were run by secret societies and so forth. And so I jumped into that rabbit hole, and with that, the things I was watching on YouTube, I was no longer watching gamers. I started watching a lot of conspiracy theory videos. And I watched a lot of Christian conspiracy theory videos, like the Vigilant Christian, Face Like the Sun, and I started watching a lot of their content, and my mind shifted from gaming to these conspiracy theory stuff on the internet, and I started getting really sucked into that, and that rabbit hole was nuts. But trust me, if you're stuck in that rabbit hole, it can be very interesting when you're in it, but after a while you gotta get back to reality and kind of realize, like, hey, maybe some of the stuff is true, maybe it's not, but you gotta, basically you need critical thinking, right? And so what happened was, for about 6 months I was into that whole thing, what happened was it got to the point where it started affecting my personal life. And that's when I brought it up with my father, and he started questioning it with me. And so I was like, I took more of a neutral approach. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, whatever. But then what happened was young Earth creationism, because there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that are young Earth creationists. So I'm not trying to bash young Earth creationists, but a lot of the Christian YouTubers that I was watching at the time were young Earth creationists, and they were saying how evolution was a lie and it's just, invented by the government and so forth. And so I started jumping into that, and I rejected evolution for that time. I rejected evolution for that time. Now, I never really accepted evolution until I actually became a theistic evolutionist. I was more of an older creationist for most of my life. But once I learned about the young Earth model, I accepted it for a brief time. And the reason why it's relevant is because with both that and the conspiracy theory stuff that I was into at the time, I came across videos that were against that view, or not against not against the what's it called? Not against the conspiracy theory stuff, but against the creationist stuff. And those videos were, of course, the atheists on the YouTube, like Potholder54, King Crocodile, that were responding to a lot of the young Earth creationist claims. And so that's when I started to doubt those beliefs. And, at the time I wasn't really smart, so I just kind of, I'm a lot of the times I dismissed those videos. I didn't really think about it, but then once I did more research, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should change my views. So I did. I became an old Earth creationist, and I actually held the gap theory for a long period of time. But anyways, so what happened was, once I accepted that, once I rejected the young Earth creationist narrative, I began to really question my faith in general. And the reason is because, especially with this YouTuber named Underlinks. And for those of you that don't know, he had a really big impact. Yes, he's an atheist, but he had a really big impact on how the way that I not think about God, but the way that I critically evaluate claims of evidence. Now, it's not that he necessarily taught it, but he kind of planted that into my mind, like, hey, you need to look at reality. Like, you can't just, like, you have to care more about truth than anything else. Now, even to this day, we disagree on a lot of things, but the one thing we can agree on is that you need to critically evaluate your beliefs. And so what happened was I started to critically evaluate my theism, and I was really close to becoming an atheist. I think the one thing that got me was he had a video on free will, and he made a video about why free will didn't exist. And what happened was I was like, free will doesn't exist? Well, that's a problem, because, I think for me at the time it was very emotional. Like, if free will didn't exist at the time, I was like, oh God, like, that's not good, because if my choices are all just predetermined by prior causes, and if I have no control over those choices, like, why should I care about anything? Like, then this just makes, theism totally improbable, and Christianity improbable, and so forth. And so what happened was I started to doubt free will, and once that happened, I was like, I need to just get rid of all my beliefs. And it is true that not the interaction problem, but kind of realizing the distinction between the supernatural and natural, I kind of, because of my views on free will at the time, because I started to disbelieve in free will, I also started to disbelieve in a lot of the supernatural claims, because, this made the problem of evil much worse. And so once that occurred to me, then I was like, okay, there's no way that, that Christianity is much less probable given free will. And so what happened was, once I started to doubt free will, I started to just doubt all my Christian beliefs and so forth. And so I was really close to actually becoming an atheist, and and I realized, the logical issues with how is it that how is it that everything that can be said by science can interact with something that is, that is supernatural? How can the natural and the supernatural interact if they're two totally different substances or ontologies? And so what happened was I started to really question that. And that ultimately brought me to the crux of my problem, which was basically just the problem of evil and the lack of free will and the lack of evidence for theism at the time. However, something saved me. It was, and hopefully you all know who this guy is, but the one person that saved me was Inspiring Philosophy. If it was not for his channel, I could say pretty confidently that I would not be a Christian today. I would probably most likely be agnostic. I would be, a materialist, and I would probably I don't know if I would believe in free will. I'd probably be like a compatibilist or something like that. But regardless, I would not be a Christian if it was not for his channel. And the first video I think I came across of his was his video on how free will worked. And once I watched that video, I was like, okay, free will is possible, and there's no reason to doubt it. So that's what happened. So I watched that video, then I saw the rest of his videos, and then and once I saw some of his responses to the common arguments for atheism that I was hearing, I was like, okay, this seems reasonable. Like, I can believe in God, and it's reasonable to believe in God. It's not like this blind faith that I have to believe in lack of evidence. Like, I can actually believe based on evidence, and I can use kind of the same standards that underlings would use to evaluate claims, while at the same time having a belief in theism. And so that's what happened, was I accepted that fact, and I accepted theism full-heartedly at the time. And I gotta say, I'm gonna give Underlings credit, because he did help me to understand the way that you need to critically evaluate beliefs. However, I'm also going to give Inspiring Philosophy credit, because he basically saved my faith at the time. And so I give them both credit. Even though Underlings is an atheist, I do give him credit that he helped me in that sort of way to not only just to get out of creationism, but also to just critically evaluate beliefs. Like don't take a belief and then make it like your ultimate thing. Like, you have to protect it no matter what. Like, no, be open to changing your views based on new evidence. And that's kind of what set that into finding Inspiring Philosophy, so then I could actually have, a good foundation to build upon. And so once I built that good foundation, then I started to, I became to critically evaluate my beliefs, and I changed a lot of my views. Like, I became a theistic evolutionist and so forth. And so from that, I started researching apologetics, and I got into things like, I got into idealism at that time. I didn't really understand at the time, but then once I started doing more research, then I, started liking it a lot. And then I would get into discussions with Johann and Ratz, and we would discuss just, idealism in general. And so I started really liking that stuff, and it inspired me to get into apologetics and critically evaluate your beliefs and so forth. And that, you can have a rational basis for your beliefs. It's not just, based on lack of evidence. And I think that's the important thing to remember here. And so basically, I went from video games to conspiracy theory stuff to doubting my beliefs, and then restoring my beliefs. And now, since I got to that restoring my beliefs part, I've just been kind of, I built my foundation there, and then I've been just building off all my views from there. And now I have views that are somewhat different than at that time period. And some of my views have strengthened, others have been weakened, but, that's what you need to do. You need to critically evaluate your beliefs and so forth. And so now I'm at the point where, I'm doing more research, and I am open to changing my beliefs based on the evidence and based on the argumentation put forth. And I'm open to dialogues and so forth. And so, yeah, I think it was a pretty good journey. I still do like the video game stuff. I don't watch their channels anymore, but I still do play video games sometimes. But now I've focused more of my time on researching and learning new things because that helps me to understand reality better. And so I'm at the point now where like I kind of superseded Underlinks's methods, even though they did have some good ideas. I think ultimately he's wrong on a lot of things. And if you go to his channel, you can kind of tell that he hasn't really changed his views a lot. Like, he hasn't changed his position for like the past 4 or 5 years, whereas I've changed a lot of my positions in the past 4 or 5 years. And he uses the same arguments, and he just hasn't, like, a lot of his arguments are pretty much addressed when you actually, like, I mean, I'm at the point now where I actually, like, look at the literature, and it's like, dude, like, this guy hasn't looked at any of the literature at all, and he's using arguments that are basically been refuted, like, by atheists themselves. Like, even atheist philosophers themselves have refuted these arguments. Like, so that's kind of the whole point, where I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're not open to changing your beliefs, and if you don't change your beliefs, to accommodate new evidence, it's like, are you really being honest with yourself? Now, there are some beliefs that don't have to change. Like, if the evidence is constantly confirming a belief, then, there's no reason to change it. But if something comes along and it's like, hey, I need to modify this belief because of this, then you do that, because that's how you change your beliefs. And so that's the important thing to remember, and that's kind of my story. And so now, like I said before, I try my best to be as objective as possible. I try to look at both sides of the arguments and so forth, and I try to do as much research as I can and understand it as much as I can and so forth. So just always be open to change your beliefs, and even for me now, it's like I care about truth ultimately. So it's not even like, I mean, yeah, the foundation I built upon religion is good, but at the same time, if that foundation doesn't work, then you change that foundation. So that's pretty much it. But yeah, but that's my story. And if you have any questions, let me know. But yeah, I've changed a lot through these past years, and so that's all I gotta say about that. But anyways, thank you guys for watching or listening. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, you can subscribe now, and hopefully I can do better videos. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and have a nice day.